Before Yitzchak Avinu sends Yaakov away to Padan Aram, which is where he'll eventually marry and build a family, he gives him a brocha. The question is, what was the nature of that brocha? Rashi will say something that is a little startling, which will give us insight not only into what the brocha is, but also why it was given in this particular way and how it affects us as Yaakov's descendants. But the brocha was Yitzchak had given Yaakov and when hat him geschickt kein Padan Aram. So the brocha that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov at that time was stated in Pasuk. Pasuk tells us that he said, "V'itenu es brichas Avraham." May the Eibishter grant you the brocha that was given to Avraham Avinu. So Rashi quotes those words. It's Rashi matik deveta es brichas Avraham, and his Mefarish explains what is that brocha. Sha'am aloi, that the Eibishter said to Avraham, "Eschal goy gadol," I'm going to make you into a great nation. And that there will be brocha that comes through your descendants, which means these brochas will be handed over to you. A little bit later, we're going to unpack exactly what Rashi is saying. But first of all, we're going to ask three questions. The first thing that it really doesn't seem to make sense is the pasuk actually seems to tell us what the brocha is. Why is Rashi introducing something else? The pasuk is. The pasuk tells us what the brocha to Avraham was, that you'll inherit the land that you're currently living in, which raises 2 points. Firstly, why does Rashi have to explain anything if the pasuk tells us what the brocha is? You're getting the land of Israel. That's the brocha. And besides that, and even more so, Rashi is Gomer Forishas mit Birchas Avram, vegemeint andere brochas. Rashi actually identifies different brochas, not the ones mentioned in the pasuk, or the one mentioned in the pasuk. Veschel goy gadol is a different brocha from a different place. Visborcha b'zaracha. So niti brocha shteit dam aferish and pasuk. Why does Rashi not just identify the brocha that is stated clearly in the pasuk? That's question number one. Question number two. Let's assume that for whatever reason Rashi does have to give a brocha. Let's just say that. Well, then he doesn't seem to be giving us all of the information about the brocha. If Rashi, for whatever reason, is compelled to tell us that this pasuk is actually referring to other brochas besides inheriting the land, which is stated explicitly, who knows that it's these two brochas specifically? And if it is these two brochas, dem inyan und teichen from Veschale goy gadol gefindt man mit Birchas Avraham, b'leshon is from Merad Goshen riba muflag. If you're talking about the brocha that Hashem's going to make you into a great nation, well, when Hashem tells it to Avraham Avinu, he tells it to him with greater detail and actually quite a spectacular version of what that brocha is. Because what does he say? And look what the Eibishter said to Avraham. I'm going to make your people, your descendants, numerous as the sand of the earth. That's much more than just saying generically, I'll make you a great nation. Or as the pasuk says, I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars. So that also is a lot more direct. Why doesn't Rashi use that? Now, it wouldn't be because Rashi says, well, that's just detail. The brocha is that you'll be a great nation, and the detail is like sand and like stars. Was is the ikar v'etzem brocha, but the main brocha is that you'll be a great nation. Rashi bring them maybe all Rashi is doing over here is telling us the generic brocha without getting down into all of those details. That cannot be an explanation because first of all, this is klar niglatik, that really doesn't fit. Weil von dem Guf, was die Avtach ist, samte Gomer kafara oretz, and arba Gomer kekeche v'ashamayim Gomer. Seeing as those promises that your children will be as many as the sand and the stars, the Eibishter getelt als bazunder brochas. The Eibishter said those are separate, individuated brochas. That implies that each of those has an additional brocha besides the general theme that you'll have a great nation. That means there are different brochas, unique brochas. This is moving as is self-understood. As mit goy gadol kemen chazari was is kleiner und kann viel nicht verglichen während Safaroretz oder Kech v'Hashamayim. It's quite obvious if you say you're going to be a great nation, which means you'll be numerous. It doesn't have to come anywhere close to the numbers represented by the sand and the stars. Those are additional unique brochas. So it wouldn't make sense that Rashi is anticipating in the words v'eschal goy gadol that it also includes the brocha of the sand and the stars. But more importantly, the brocha that you'll be a great nation is not reserved only for the descendants of Yitzchak, but also for Yishmael. So therefore we need to know the sand and the stars because that is unique to the brocha that was given to Yitzchak, or Avraham Avinu through Yitzchak, and Rashi would have told us that surely, right? Und al pizei yumtek der hechach von die brochas kafar orts kun kech va shamayim, a brocha nesefes yuchedes, weil das is noch bnei Avraham, Yitzchak Yaakov. That's why the Torah would have to tell us about the stars in the sand, because that is a brocha that is only going to go to Yitzchak and specifically to the children of Yaakov. So the question really is, if Rashi is compelled to tell us other brochas, how do you know it's these brochas, and why doesn't he include other brochas that were given to Avraham Avinu? And the third question is that Gimel Nachmer Tmiyah, what makes this even more surprising is Lechera is got a hechas zagen as the pasuk da meint, but after need these two brachas. If you look at the context of this pasuk, not only does it not seem to be specifically these two brachas, which raises the question, why is Rashi identifying only these two brachas? It actually seems like in the context of the pasuk that it's specifically not these two brachas. Why so? Very simply, because those brachas of a great nation and like the stars and sand were effectively given to Yitzchak already. The Eibishter says, I will increase your seed like the stars. And the second part that Rashi quotes, which is that your children will be a brocha, and they will have brocha, and be a source of brocha, is also given to Yitzchak, which raises a very intriguing question. If Yitzchak received these brochas from Hashem, surely he should say to Yaakov, I'm passing on my brochas. Why is he saying, I'm giving you the brochas of Avraham Avinu? Why is it that Yitzchak has to give the brocha that was given to Avraham Avinu if he already has the same brochas? It would be much more logical, much more appropriate for Yitzchak to say, I have certain brochas and I'm passing them on to you. Why is he bringing Avraham Avinu into the picture? Unless it's not as simple as the stars and the sand, which is why Rashi doesn't mention the stars and the sand, and there's something else going on over here. So we're going to attempt an answer, which is effectively to say, well, the pasuk is talking about about inheriting the land, and maybe that's not a brocha. But again, the fact that Rashi is identifying that the brocha here is not what seems obvious in the pasuk, inheriting the land, but rather the great nation and the brocha to your descendants. So some of the Mefarshim suggest the reason for that is because getting the land of Israel is a gift from Hashem rather than a brocha from Hashem. We could even add some clarity on this. Why Rashi doesn't naturally just say, oh, the brocha that Hashem gave to Avraham, which I'm now transmitting to you, is the brocha to inherit the land as stated in the pasuk. Because the same pasuk says, which land are you going to inherit? The land that Hashem gave, past tense, to Avraham Avinu. How do you give a brocha about something that will happen in the future if in the same breath you say it's already happened? Davish has already given the land to Avraham Avinu. It's no longer appropriate to say, and in the future Hashem will give you that land, as birchas Avraham, as the fulfillment of a brocha given to Avraham Avinu. Who needs the fulfillment of the brocha? The land was already given to Avraham Avinu earlier. Avraham Avinu already had it. Not as a brocha of something wistful for the future, but actually practically given to him. So that's the answer that the Mefarshim tried to offer. The reason that Rashi does not want to say that this pasuk is referring to the giving of the land is because it's a past tense experience and it's a gift, not a brocha. But that is not a good enough explanation because let's look at the first brocha, which is that the Eibishter told Avraham Avinu, you're going to be a great nation. Right? That's what the Eibishter told Avraham and promised him. And that is the brocha that Yitzchak is giving to Yaakov. Why so? Well, obviously Yitzchak is implying that the brocha originally given to Avraham Avinu about being a great nation is actually going to manifest practically in Yaakov's descendants more so than in Avraham's descendants. So you could say the same thing about actually inhabiting the land. Because practically speaking, according to the pshat of the pasuk, the land wasn't yet given completely to Avram's jurisdiction. It's just because the Eibishter said something. What the Eibishter says is as good as done. So therefore, if the Eibishter says the land is yours, it's as good as yours. But we know what's going to happen. It's still going to have to be conquered in the future by Yeshua, etc. Is the brochas, the Eibishter's haftochas, and a sin of Eretz Yisrael, so Avram and Zalois Gifrit V'Rem B'Feil by Yaakov Avanav. Therefore, Yitzchak is saying, in the same way as the brocha that the Eibishter gave to Avraham Avinu that you'd be a great nation, did not happen with Avram's descendants, but it will happen with Yaakov's descendants. So in the same way, the brocha that the Eibishter gave, or the nesina that the Eibishter handed over the land of Eretz Yisrael to Avraham Avinu, didn't actually take hold yet, but it will take hold in the time of Yaakov and his descendants. They'll be the one to inherit Eretz Yisrael, and therefore the brocha could still be the Rishtecha Eretz Megurechon. This is not yet a compelling reason why Rashi does not accept that that's the brocha that Yitzchak was giving to Yaakov. And let's even add to this that if the only reason why Rashi does not want to explain that the brocha is inheriting the land, he would have included the words, not only in his headline, the words as Brichas Avraham, he would have continued to say the Rishtecha. Or at least he would have said an etc. That tells you that Rashi is not pegging the brocha on the receiving of the land, in spite of the fact that that's an argument put forward by the Mefarshim. So let's try a different explanation, which is Rashi brings the two examples that Rashi quotes, which is the brocha being a great nation, and the brocha of blessings from and through your descendants. Now, they very nit gemeint dafka die zwei brochas. Maybe it didn't mean only these two brochas. Those are just kind of samplings of the various brochas of Avraham Avinu that are going to be bequeathed to Yaakov. Now, maybe what Yitzchak is giving to Yaakov over here is all the manifold brochas that Hashem gave to Avraham Avinu. And they are in between. Which is actually the first brocha to Avraham Avinu, is the Esher brocha for the Meibus and Avraham, and that's like an A to Z. The Vescha is the first brocha that Hashem gave Avraham. V'isbaruch is the last, and effectively the message is, I'm giving you all of the brochas that Avraham Avinu was given from the first to the last. Maybe that's what Rashi is trying to tell us. But that's really difficult to read into Rashi if Rashi doesn't even allude to saying that. So this is a real stretch, because Aleph, Rashi Rashi should have done something at least to insinuate that when he's talking over here about the brachas that Yitzchak is giving to Yaakov, it includes all of the brachas of Avraham Avinu between V'eschal Goy and Misbaruch B'Zaracha. V'oid ve'ikar, plus, most importantly, Rashi firtos kidel, as we're going to examine in just a moment, Rashi adds detail over here where he says, Mimcha yetzei oisoi hagoy, out of you, Yaakov, is going to come that nation which is the Goy Gadol promised to Avraham Avinu. V'oisoi hazer ha'mevorach, and it's you who will produce those descendants who will have those brachas of his baruch v'zaracha. Was tefun is moving as I mean dafke die zwei brachas. That's pretty clear evidence that Rashi only means these two specific brachas, which takes us back to our original question: how does Rashi know it's these two brachas? Why does he say different brachas to what is stated explicitly in the pasuk? So to get to understand that, Vaiten is Rashi mamshich. Let's look at those words of Rashi, which we've just briefly touched on now, which is Yiyu oisan habrachas hamuris b'shvilcha. Those brachas that were said to Avraham Avinu should be your brachas, Yaakov. Mimcha yetzei oisa hagoy. Out of you will come that nation which is V'eschal Goy Gadol. V'oisoi hazer ha'maverch. And out of you will come that seed, those descendants who are blessed v'isbaruch b'zaracha. Why does Rashi have to give us so much detail? Really doesn't seem to make sense. What do all of these extra words actually help us to understand? The simplest way to understand the pasuk is, as is it not obvious that the brachas that Rashi has now linked to this particular pasuk, the brachas of Goy Gadol and the brachas of Yisbaruch v'Zaracha, but since Yaakov, surely they fit to the words which are v'yitenecha. Why does he have to say mimcha? Yeah, and why does he have to say that? So there is a way we could explain this, and we could say Rashi wants to be clear that it's the very brachos that were given to Avraham Avinu that are now being distributed to Yaakov, not brachos of a similar nature. Some Mefarshim point out. Then when he says, I'm giving to you the same bracha that Avraham Avinu had, not that Yitzchak was saying, I'm going to give you similar brachas. I learned from the brachas that Hashem gave to Avraham, and therefore I'm going to give you similar brachas when I bless you. Right? Which could leave the possibility that the brachas originally allocated to Avraham Avinu might go somewhere else. So that's why he's saying, I'm giving you these brachas. You need to know the brachas allocated for Avraham Avinu are now being dispatched to you. But what Rashi then continues with the details of that you will be the one who produces this great nation and the blessed descendants. His blows are kefil. Was is shein moving from the US and brachas amuras bishvilcha. That's kind of double language of something we already know, which is the brachas are coming to you. And one little nuance which is going to be relevant over here, we have to understand seeing as Rashi is explaining to us what the brachas are that Yitzchak is offering to Yaakov. From pasuk es. Why does he have to include the word es in the heading, which he apparently is not explaining? So in order to understand this, we've got to get to the core of what's really bothering Rashi over here. The explanation is the shverkat vasashe bavont in pasuk is what Rashi is addressing in this pasuk, which doesn't seem to make sense, is that generally speaking, when a brocha is given in the Torah, there is some kind of either reason for the brocha that is stated in the pasuk, or it's obvious why the brocha is necessary, and we need to understand what is the reason behind the brochas that Yitzchak is giving to Avraham at this particular to Yaakov at this particular point in time. When the Torah that self brocha vasemet zohat bakumen. Generally, when the Torah describes a bracha that somebody received, generally the Torah tells us why they got that bracha, or we can work it out on our own accord. Let's give an example. Look at the previous bracha that Yitzchak gave. As Yitzchak had gesagt, Yitzchak tells Yaakov and Esav, Hine knows I'm old. Therefore, produce for me delicacies. And then, because it's the correct time to give a bracha, and you would have done service for me, then I'll be able to give you a bracha. Another example, similarly, when the Eibishter blessed Yitzchak that he should live in this land, there was a famine. Yitzchak considered going to Mitzrayim, following the example of his father. And the Eibishter says, there's a reason why you would consider X. If I'm giving you a bracha, stay where you are and everything will be good. At least go to grow. Or after the Akedah, where the Eibishter says, I'm giving you a bracha, Avraham Avinu. Why? Because you showed such dedication to listen to my voice. You could look throughout the whole Tanakh, you'll see multiple examples of this. So usually, if a bracha is given to somebody, there's context why they're getting that bracha. Now, what's the context here? Benindi Danaber is in Pasuk Nidon Gedait. The pasuk doesn't clarify for us what the reason is that Yitzchak's giving Yaakov a bracha. Nor is it self-understood. What's the reason that's compelling Yitzchak at this particular junction to give Yaakov a bracha? It makes sense that he's giving him a bracha that David should bless him and allow him to expand, etc. And it should form a nation. That you can understand. Yitzchak, from his perspective, is sending Yaakov away not to escape Esav. That's Rivka's perspective. But in Pshuto Shel Mikra, we don't know that she told this to Yitzchak. So Yitzchak's perspective is he's sending Yaakov to get a shidduch. So what's the bracha? Pruravu, that you should be successful. You should find a shidduch. You should build a family. But why here is it relevant to say that you should get the bracha of Avraham to inherit Eretz Yisrael? He's leaving Eretz Yisrael at this particular point in time. Why is this the bracha here? Why are the brachas of Avraham irrelevant? If we're going to take it at face value, that the bracha given to Avraham Avinu, which Yitzchak is now dispensing to Yaakov, is the bracha to inherit the land, that bracha should have been when Yaakov came to get the brachas in lieu of Esav. And at that point, Yitzchak should have said to him, I'm giving you all the brachas, etc., and the land. Which is the legacy bracha that Yitzchak is giving to Yaakov Avinu before he believes that he might leave this world. So this is what's bothering Rashi. Why is this bracha here at this point? Where the message is you're going to form a family, why is it something's missing? There's a brichas Avraham in the story that we're not seeing. What is it? The Rebbe is Hashem Meforish, therefore Rashi has to explain. So Rashi says it's quite obvious then that the bracha given to Avraham Avinu, which is now being passed on to Yaakov, has to be a bracha that is related somehow to Shidduchim, because that's the context. And therefore it refers to making a great nation. That's something you do when you start a family. You have the opportunity to create something that will build to become a great nation, and children who will be blessed. And actually that fits contextually with the bracha that just precedes this, which is that as David should bless you, and that you should be able to build, have many children, build a great family. Which is all the continuation of the instruction that Yitzchak is giving to Yaakov Avinu, go find a wife, start a family. Haben asach Kinder, so to have many children, which is the theme of making a great nation. And that they should be children who are blessed. That is the brocha you give somebody who's about to go and start a family. But there is something very specific over here. That not only does Yitzchak say, I want you to have a great family, but he says this is the brocha of Avraham Avinu. Anytime that a person gets married, you give him a brocha. Please God, many children, you should have a beautiful family, etc. But Yaakov's circumstances are very similar to Avraham Avinu's circumstances when he got a brocha from the Eibishter about having a family and having children under adverse circumstances. And that's what Yitzchak has to give to Yaakov. It's not just any ordinary brocha that was given to Avraham Avinu. Now the brocha hamiyuchedes was given about Avraham beyichud. Yitzchak here is identifying a unique brocha that was specific to Avraham Avinu's circumstances. On the far Rashi to S, that's why Rashi adds the word S, because that's kind of focusing us to understand and to appreciate. I'm giving you the style of and the type of brocha that Avraham Avinu got when he was in circumstances that are similar to yours, which is why he needed that brocha, which is why you need that brocha. Yaakov hat gedarf gehen in Weg Arain. Right now, what Yaakov is doing is he's departing on a journey. Kum leich Padan Aram, as Yitzchak tells him, go to Padan Aram. From fear, as derech is ma'etas periverivia. We do know from Parshas Lech Lecha that travel is something that interferes with the ability to be able to produce a family. Hashem, as it interferes with the ability for a person to create a name for themselves. Therefore, Yitzchak, knowing that Yaakov is about to go on a journey and wanting to bless him, to have not just a family, but a great family with many children, what does he say is the brocha? I want to give you the brocha that Avraham Avinu got from the Eibishter under similar circumstances. Die Brocha of Eschol Godel is Avraham gegeben geworden, b'miyuchot zu dem lech lecha mi'artzecha, was is memait periverivia. When, under what circumstances, did David bless Avraham Avinu that you would become a great nation? When he left on a journey mandated and instructed by Hashem, but a journey nonetheless, where the nature of the journey is that it should diminish the opportunity to develop and create a family, and therefore the Eibishter has to say to him, Eschol Godel. Rashi is dot mefarish, and Rashi goes into detail about it in Parshas Lech Lecha. So now we understand the context. This is why it's Birchas Avraham, because Yaakov, your circumstances are about to be similar to Avraham Avinu's circumstances when he got that brocha and when you'll need that brocha. And also the brocha that your children will be blessed and blessing will come through them. Because naturally what happens when you're traveling around is you diminish your name and therefore you're not a brocha to people, etc. So Yaakov Avinu, he's already taken care of. You'll have brocha despite the fact that you're on the road. But your children, that needs to be Birchas Avraham. You need to have the brocha that Avraham Avinu was given by the Eibishter, that your children should still be able to establish a name for themselves, even though they're going to live, as Yitzchak possibly knew prophetically, outside of Eretz Yisrael, so to speak, on the road for many years. So that helps us to understand where Rashi is coming from and why he's not identifying that the bracha over here is specifically about inheriting the land. Rather, it is a bracha that has to be related to a shidduch and developing a family, and the brachas that Avraham Avinu got in that context. There's still a question, however. It says, aber die Shaila. Was ist Yitzchak's Kavone in Benchen Yaakov mit die brachas miuchados von Birchas Avraham? Die brachas sind lechenet mekuim geworden bei Avraham and Gufa. It's a little bit strange that Yitzchak is giving the brachas to Avraham Avinu, to Yaakov, when we don't really see that those brachas actually happened to Avraham himself. Of course, Yitzchak is focused on the future, and he wants the bracha to extend to the future. But as die bracha is gegeben geworden Avraham, weil sein derech is mema'etes periverivia, but it is strange, because this bracha was given to Avraham Avinu to mitigate the fact that travel diminishes the ability to start a family. And batzitzach die bracha to the periverivia from Avraham atzmoi, und das zefn lecheranit. So we're linking this bracha to Yaakov back to the bracha that was given to Avraham Avinu, a bracha that doesn't really seem to have manifested. Varum, by Avraham is geworden nor ein Sohn von Sarah, Yitzchak. It's Avraham and Sarah going on this journey together, Lech Lecha, getting the bracha that it's not going to interfere with periverivia, and ending up with only one son, Yitzchak. And it's specifically Yitzchak who is supposed to be the legacy of Avraham Avinu's ideology and faith and connection to the Eibush, etc. So yes, there were other sons, Yishmael and the children of Keturah, but they don't fit into this bracha of the Goy Gadol. And wie kann man sagen, als in der Heilade von ein Sohn Yitzchak hat sich ausgedrückt die Brocha von Peri Verivia, was hat bewohnt der Miut von Peri Verivia durch Derech. So how does this make sense? You're getting a brocha, they should have many children, to counterbalance the fact that being out and about, traveling around, limits children, and the brocha turns out to be one child. Likewise, the brocha that your children will be blessed. Where do you see that happened in any outstanding way with regard to Avraham Avinu's descendants? First of all, out of all of Avraham Avinu's descendants, only one of them is considered his real legacy, his real heir. So it seems like the brocha didn't really affect the other Zaracha. But nachher Yitzchak is geboren geworden, is wegen Yishmael gesagt geworden. But even before Yitzchak is born, and Yishmael is introduced into the story, how's he introduced? He's going to be a wild man. He's going to create conflict with everybody. People are going to hate him. That sounds like the opposite of his brocha b'zar acha. So you're giving a brocha that was originally intended for Avraham Avinu to Yaakov when those brochas don't really seem to be very successful. The Rabbi is Rashi Mamshech. That's why Rashi has to add the additional words that we thought initially were just word salad. Those brachas that were stated to Avraham should be manifested to you, Yaakov. Die brachas welche seien gesagt worden in Avraham, sei atzmon velen sein zu lieb Yaakov. Yitzchak is recontextualizing over here that brachas that were stated to Avraham Avinu are actually going to be intended for Yaakov instead. Because dafka by im velen sein iskaim veren befeil, he will be the individual to see these brachas happen. He will see a great nation and he will see brachas for his children. Obviously, his taka given before you can see this if you know the story. As by Yaakov and seinen Geboren die Beis Shvatim, Yaakov not only has more than one son, 12 sons, but they're not just sons; they're the 12 Shvatim. Was in dem Gufei Shenikati Ascholon Yesod von Agoy Godel. If you have 12 tribes, that is the indication that you have built the foundation on which a great nation will develop. So you can see clearly that there the brocha is happening. That in spite of the fact that Yaakov is on the journey and away from home and in a foreign environment, all of the things that might have interfered with his ability to create a beautiful family, he does so successfully because why? Because the brocha is there. And while we're about it, reading Rashi's interpretation helps us to understand another issue in the simple understanding of the pasuk, which is how come Yitzchak sent Yaakov personally to find a wife when that's not how things worked out for him? Avraham Avinu sent a shliach on his behalf. How come Yitzchak does not follow the model of his father to send a trusted representative and say, you find a wife for Yaakov wherever it is? Again, going back to the point we mentioned already before, the reason that Yaakov is going to Padan Aram in Yitzchak's assessment is only to get a shidduch. Not because he has to escape Esav, because the simple reading of the pasuk is that only Rivka knew that Esav had these murderous designs, and Yitzchak was never told. So why is it then that if in Yitzchak's mind he's sending Yaakov to get a shidduch, why send him personally? Why not send a shliach? And don't say, the reason is because Yitzchak wasn't allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. That may be true, but number one, it's not something stated clearly in Shutei Shel Mikra. Number two, we only get that information after Yitzchak's already married. Because so don't argue that the reason Yitzchak couldn't go personally to find a shidduch is because he's not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael, because he has the status of an oila, perfect offering for the Eibishter after having gone through the Akedah, which is why he's not allowed to leave Israel. Whereas Yaakov could leave Eretz Yisrael, so it's better for you to go and find the wife yourself. Because if you read the simple understanding, it's not need das given the time of Sibbe, Avraham atin gewollt lassen Yitzchak in Aram Naraim. You read the pasuk. There's nothing in the pasuk that indicates the reason Avraham Avinu did not want Yitzchak to go find his own shidduch is because he could not leave Eretz Yisrael. Plus, and später is Yitzchak in Nizgali geworden, as there is an Elatmim vein chutz la'aretz gedai lecha. The first time we actually hear this information is when there's a famine, which is when Yitzchak is already married to Rivka, and they have to now look for a place to go. He wants to go to Mitzrayim, and the Eibishter says, no, don't leave this place. And the reason is because it's an Oila Tamima. So why is it that Yaakov has to go personally find a shidduch and we can't rely on a shliach? So that question, why Yitzchak sent Yaakov personally to get a shidduch, is alluded to in the way that Rashi explains the pasuk about these brochas that were given to Yaakov Avinu, that I want you to have a great nation and blessed children. The fact that the Eibishter blessed Avraham Avinu, that his descendants would be a great nation, was in the context of, and as a result of the dedication that Yaakov showed, that Avraham Avinu showed, that he was willing to go on this journey, even not knowing where he was going. Yitzchak is replicating that with Yaakov and saying, what I want you to do is, I want you to go like your grandfather went away from home and then he got all these great brochas, the brocha of Eschal Goy Gadol. I want you to manifest the brocha of Eschal Goy Gadol, so you got to go. If you go on this journey, which is not going to be comfortable or easy, that will open up the schus for you to be able to get the brochas that were originally earmarked for Avraham Avinu to actually happen to you, a great nation and blessed children. I bet you'll say, looks like Yishmael also got similar brachas. Make a fint, I say Yishmael is gebench geworden from the Meibishten with dieselbe brocha. It seems that what Yishmael experiences is the same brocha as what Yaakov gets. The Eibishter says, I bless him, I allow him to expand and to have children, many of them. He's also going to have 12 princes, like the Havdil, the 12 Shvatim, on a Sativ and a Goy Gadol, and going to make him a great nation. So, what's so unique about Yaakov Avinu? Haint is in Vos Vasheta Yisrael Miyuchod in the brocha to Yaakov. And so, what's so special about the brocha that's being given to Yaakov Avinu, if it's a brocha which is apparently quite similar for Yishmael? Noch meshver is was Menevus Hashem is Esav als Goy wird verglichen zu Yaakov. Plus, when you look at Esav as a nation in the world, it would appear that the Eibishter is describing the nation of Esav as equivalent to the nation of Yaakov. Shnei Goyim, the pasuk says, the two nations, implying equality, that are in Rivka's womb. Shnei Liumim, two superpowers. The Rebbe Hashem Moisev Vimcha Yitzei Oisoi Hagoiva Oisei Hazera Hamavorach. That's why Rashi has to be really specific over here and say it. From you, Yaakov Avinu, will come that great nation and that blessed set of descendants. Mashenki di brocha b'shaychus to Yishmael, and in other words, Rashi is illustrating that the brochas as Yishmael experiences them, they may look the same, massive quantity, big nation, as well as the prediction about Esav that he would be a great nation. They may actually have abundance, they may actually have great numbers, but that is nothing to do with the brochas that the Eibishter gave to Avraham Avinu, because those are reserved uniquely for Yaakov. Which helps us to explain the end of the pasuk. Where's Yaakov going? He's going to be the first of the Avos who's going to be building a family outside of Eretz Yisrael. So, the brocha from Goy Gadol is by him verbunden dafke mit seiner Wecke in Bederch kein Chutzlaretz. And as we've just illustrated, he needs to go on the journey in order to get the brochas, which is quite ironic, right? He's not in the land to get the brochas, he's out of the land to get the brochas. Da Kegen Esav bleibt in Eretz Yisrael, and ironically, who remains in Eretz Yisrael? Esav, who doesn't really seem to belong there. And you could then think, well, you know what? Esav now has a claim on Eretz Yisrael because he's the one who remains in the land without interruption, whereas Yaakov is the one who's got to leave. Therefore, is Yitzchak Moisif. Therefore, you have to know that you'll inherit the land. It's not the core brocha that's being given over here, but it's an important part of the story because the circumstances might lead people to believe that you've lost your claim on Eretz Yisrael, so I have to reiterate it. But specifically, because you are the one who's going to get these brachas, you are the one who's going to have the great nation, you are the one who's going to have the blessed children. Well, if you're the one getting the brachas of Avraham Avinu, then naturally it makes sense. You're the one who gets the land promised to Avraham Avinu. You're that people, you're that nation, the one to which Hashem promised the land. Lastly, another thing about the brocha that Yitzchak gives, which is the brocha should be for you. Out of you will come this great nation. Which, as Rashi has illustrated, links us back specifically to the brochas that Hashem gave to Avraham Avinu to be a great nation and blessed children. Remember, we asked the question at the beginning, why doesn't Rashi mention the fact that there's the brocha that you'll be like the stars in the sand? So the reason is, for that is, even the brocha here at the beginning of Yitzchak's statement, where it says that the Eibusha should make you manifold, those both highlight the incredible number of descendants. But you don't see necessarily, just because there's huge numbers, stars and sand, that it's necessarily linked to Avraham, or in our case, to Yaakov. Whereas the brocha, which is personalized, I'll make you a great nation, that's telling us something, not just that one day there'll be millions and millions of people who have your DNA, but it means that they will have a link to you and everything that you stand for. As Eres the Goygodel, which means that you become the great nation. Not only do you father the great nation, you become the great nation. Right? Likewise, the brocha that extends through your children to all the nations. So why is there that brocha? Not just because the Eibusha blessed them, it's the brocha you get for being a descendant of Avraham Avinu. So this is a very important detail. This is not just materialistic brocha, quantitative brocha. This is a brocha that links the person back to Avraham Avinu, links the nation back to Avraham Avinu. On das is given brichas Yitzchak v'iten chayes brichas Avraham. That's what Yitzchak is giving to Yaakov. I'm giving you the brocha of Avraham Avinu. Eschol gadol isbarach v'zaracha. You oison brocha isamuris bishvilcha. That these brachas should be yours, Yaakov Avinu. Mimcha yeitzei sahagoyves azer hamavarich. And from you will come a nation that will link back to you, will link back to Avraham Avinu. So it should be very clear that the bracha given to Avraham Avinu will only manifest through Yaakov, not Yishmael or Esav, even if they look really similar. Which is real, because we see it even today. We call ourselves Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, Shiftei Yisrael. We name ourselves after Yaakov Avinu, which shows that our great nation is linked back to that original person, Yaakov, which was the blessing that Yitzchak gave him. And likewise, all of the brachas that we get in our lives, we get those brachas as the descendants and children of Yaakov Avinu, which is obviously a beautiful thing for us, that we have this link at all times to the Avos, and that the Avos have a link to us, and Hashem, through that we can get all these tremendous brachas.